operations of the private sector. So government is a facilitator, government is an enabler, because in an economy like ours, where you have a small private sector, government has to facilitate the growth of the private sector. So basically, we are a proponent of the free market economy, and then we believe in a lean government. Okay, a lean government, unlike what is there or what has been there, because when you propound a free market economy, you need a smaller government that gives more space to the private sector. Because when you have a huge government, it consumes most of the resources, leaving very little resources for the private sector.
Isn't there a very, very thin line in terms of failure and success when the government is lean?
No, when the government is lean, there are all advantages. One is efficient, it has high morale because you pay them better. Okay, and then you leave resources for the private sector development. In this country, we have been running a very huge government. And when you run a very huge government, you crowd out the private sector. And basically, you push up interest rates. Right now in this country, there's little money in circulation. Not only that, there is even little money for the private sector. When it's available, it's expensive. Why? Because government consumes most of the money, because we have such a huge bureaucracy. Zambia runs one of the most expensive government at the top. And we will only see development when we reduce the size of government expenditure in terms of personal emoluments. Right now, if you look at the budget, government spends, of the national budget, government spends over 50% of its budget on personnel-related emoluments. So meaning basically wages. And then you starve economic facilitation. You starve service delivery. What is service delivery? Better schools, better hospitals, better roads. Because roads are public goods which only government by and large can put. And when you have a highly conservative government, little resources are left to create, to put up the right roads, to maintain the roads, to enable an economy. You have little money to have better education. You have little money to have better health care in the country, which are really, for me, rights for all. So they have no option. If you have a bigger government, you have poor service delivery, but there will be no money.
Is that a philosophy that you'd particularly say is unique to the party? Would you not say this is something that even the UPND has been propounding very much of late?
No, we continue to emphasize it, including MMD did that, including PF was emphasizing that, and therefore it's work in progress. So
what should make us believe that things would change?
Well, if you look at our manifesto, for example, we propose reduced number of ministries.
To how many?
To 20.
Which ministries do you think are relevant and need to go?
There will be no ministry that goes. We'll just merge them. Let me give you an example. You have the Ministry of Agriculture on one hand and Ministry of Fisheries and Livestock. This is one. A proper farm is diversified. It has crop, it has livestock and fisheries. So why do you want to create two ministries for the same function? So there are a lot of areas where we can merge these ministries. Look at, for example, Ministry of Youth and Sports. Even originally, when we were here, I remember by the time UNIP was leaving, it was Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports. So you need to merge that. The majority of the youth are in education. The breeding ground for skills, even for sports, are schools. And therefore, merging the Ministry of Youth and Sports with education makes a lot of sense, because the facilities to reach out to youths across the country is through schools, where they have got the network across the country, and the youth are in schools anyway. If you want to grow, to develop sports, you start from the schools. So the seedlings for sports begins in the schools. And therefore, when the sports function goes to education, you are now dealing with institutions where the people are. And it was done before. And there are better examples, sir. We are not just dreaming. There are countries who have actually demonstrated that when you have a lean government, you save resources to enable the economy to grow. The best example which has been in the region has been Botswana. Botswana, one of the poorest countries at independence, made it because they stuck to these principles. A lean government, but efficient and well paid, but giving space to the private sector. Leaving resources to the private sector. And therefore, you will have an agricultural financing bank because there are more resources. You will have an agricultural marketing agency because there are more resources. Look at how farmers are now suffering because government does not have enough money to enable agricultural marketing. Because at the moment, we have a very small private sector. The ideal is to have a big private sector that can help in agricultural marketing. But we don't have the money. Even the private sector does not have the money because it depends on deliberately created institutions for them to access cheaper credit. So we don't have a thriving private sector. And even the increased production of soybeans and other crops last year and this last farming season, the private sector is failing to meet the buying demand. And we are in touch with the key agricultural areas in this country, whether it's Mukushi, whether it's Nyimba or Kaoma or Choma or Mpongwe, or Kasempa. I'm talking about the emerging agricultural points in this country, because we have a small private sector, and which has no money because access to financing is a problem. So at this stage of our development, government must leave enough fiscal space, enough resources to enable agricultural marketing, to enable access to credit. One of the biggest issues I can tell you, even you guys here as intellectuals who are graduates or would be graduates, one of the issues you face as you walk out of this university is lack of access to cheaper credit for you to enterprise. But the next economy, the next jobs, the next poverty alleviation will be fought through entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship requires access to financing. Right now, we have over the years developed a cadre of young people who are highly entrepreneur, highly educated. The fact that they're not running business is not because they don't know what to do. They have no access to financing. So access to financing is a missing link. Now, for that to happen, you need a government that will leave enough resources to ensure that in the country there is access to financing. You look, for example, one of the institutions that President Mwanawasa reintroduced of financing, the Citizen Economic Empowerment Commission. That fund, for example, was born out of the realization that in 1990s, during the liberalization, we were a bit careless as a country. We did away with financing institutions that were used by our local entrepreneurs to access financing, whether it's in agriculture or another activity. So the same MMD later on, they reintroduced a form of financing, which is the Citizen Economic Empowerment Commission. In that, they run a fund. But look at the provisions. I have budgets here. The provisions, for example, by the time PF left, they had only allocated 250 million per year. The UPND increased a little bit to about 350 million in their first budget. This particular budget, 2023, 397 million kwacha. That is too little. It's nothing. If you check, for example, the report last month, the Minister of Small and Medium Enterprises called a meeting to find out what's going on, why people are complaining of lack of access to financing through the CEEC. It was discovered that the applications at CEC had reached a value of 16 billion kwacha. The allocation in the budget, 397. You see the problem now?
I see.
There are many entrepreneurs who want to create jobs, create value, create jobs for themselves and for their friends, create wealth for themselves, and just grow the participants in the growth agenda of our country. They are unable because they are not accessing financing. Why? The budget is basically, right now, personal emoluments and debt servicing. So these two elephants, the debt, thanks to restructuring, and we hope that the government will get it right, we structure debt, but they have forgotten to restructure government because there are two elephants in the room that have starved the economy with the financing, the debt and the huge wage bill in government. So those two elephants must be accelerated, must be reduced to create a fiscal space for the economy to begin to do what it best knows.
I understand your concerns with regards to lack of access to finance, especially among entrepreneurs. I would love to move to the next question, obviously, with the realization that every dollar, every kwacha that is taken to funding a new business, to funding an experiment, an innovation, is one taken from access to education, one taken from providing medicines in hospitals and so on and forth. But just after that, I want us to talk a little bit about mining in Zambia, because this is one of the most important sectors of the economic life of Zambia. We produce several minerals, and mining is a critical part of our economy. Copper comprises 70% of Zambia's total export earnings. And as a country, we produce about 20% of all the emeralds in the world. But many people are not happy, with how this sector has been run. In fact, we are somewhat a laughing stock when it comes to the global order, because we have failed to add value to these minerals. And on the other hand, policies such as the deductibility of the mineral royalty tax as implemented by the UPND have not been well received by many stakeholders in Zambia. Many are calling it tax holidays for the giants of mining. And I want to hear from you. If you were Zambia's president, what policies do you think would make a difference in the mining sector in this country?
Experience has taught us enough lessons. Experience within the country, in other jurisdictions, say Botswana and other mining countries, Botswana, Namibia, which are the good examples here, Chile, and I think we have enough experience not to continue making these mistakes. First of all, mining is the backbone of this economy. This economy, first of all, was built on mining. The first infrastructure that opened this country to the global modern economy was the railways. And the railways, under the British South African company, BSC, was actually built to go and transport copper. So modernity of this economy opened up to the, through access to the minerals, because Europe wanted these minerals. And so the biggest variable thing that those who brought modern economy wanted here was basically copper. And the copper has remained the backbone of the economy. But here is the issue. Post-independence, or even before that, that was supposed to be a trigger to the development of the other sectors, especially the renewable sectors, agriculture, tourism, and agriculture in its varied forms: livestock, crop, fisheries, tourism, and the consequential value addition. Now, because we have been consuming before independence, when they were mining, copper, the BSA company, and then because first this country, you have heard that it was basically ruled by a company. In that company, its main activity was mining. But there wasn't enough diversification, because they were just getting the minerals and benefit themselves. Some of the copper is what he used to build Cape Town, because the headquarters of these guys was Cape Town.
Mr. President, I'm sorry to cut you short there, but my questions are very multifaceted, and I'm very eager to move to the next. I want to learn specifically what you do differently in the mining industry.
You are caught up with the short time that we have here.
Exactly.
So I want us to go to the specific. I wanted to build up the story, because without history, you cannot be trusted for the future.
You cannot be trusted with the future.
Yeah.
I believe
the economy is not kadabra. It has a DNA. If you don't understand the DNA of the economy, you are just a joker. You understand? Now, here is the issue. Let's come to the specifics. We've made mistakes. President Kaunda, UNIP, they took over the mines. I think they went to extremes. When we took over the mines, the incompetence came inside the trading and so on. And then the production went down from as high as 500 metric tons in the 1973, equal with Chile. By the time UNIP left, we were basically at 300,000 metric tons per annum. Chile applied, mixed economic policies or free market economic policies, right economic mining regime, its production increased. By 2000, Chile was at 5 million metric tons per annum. We have never hit a million, yet we are the same. Same mineralogy, same size of the country, same population, almost similarities. Chile has become the first world. Zambia has actually become one of the poorest. Now, coming to your point specifically. So MMD came and we sought out ownership. So we have been on the two sides of extremes. What is the right policy suggestion that we are bringing is first of all a compromise, the middle lane, neither of the extremes. So in the mining sector, there is something in the ownership apart from just taxes. So Dr. Kaunda took over the mines, meaning everything, and then we ran out of money to reinvest, and also government patronage, political patronage in the mining sector, brought the mining down. But of course we benefited as a country, but finally it was not sustainable because the enterprise was killed. MMD went to the extreme, sold out the mines to the private sector, and they are benefiting more than the country. So we need to come back to the middle, that we must have a shared ownership in the mines. So first of all, our policy position on the mines is that the government, through its agents, the CCMIH, must have significant shareholding in the mining sector. Although disturbing those we have already sold, but for the new mine emerging discoveries, let the government, through the CCMIH, have at least 50%. So we believe in at least 50% ownership in the new mining operations. In some of them, 100%. Like in the gold deposits, really, we can do it. Secondly, we need better taxes. I was in Parliament when President Mwanawasa and Magande as Finance Minister introduced the windfall tax. I think that is necessary. We'll bring that back. What is windfall tax? Is where when the prices are very high, you share the windfall. And the time when windfall tax was introduced in 2008, before President Mwanawasa died, within a few months, we had collected $500 million in the mineral revenue account at the Bank of Zambia, physical dollars, in 1 year. So if we had kept the windfall tax, we wouldn't even have borrowed this money we have borrowed as a country, because that was enough source of revenue for infrastructure development. And therefore, so we need the fairer taxes that benefits us as a country. Secondly, the real soup, as I always call it, is in the ownership. So in the new mines, like for example, Mopani, where Glencore has left, as a government restructure, even if they reach a point of bringing an investor, they must not give away more than 50%. The best is run it. At least we must run one mine as a country, so that it's a standard for the other mines. We can't continue complaining of being cheated because we have no standard. So if we run one mine, one underground mine like Mopani, and another open cast mine, where we also understand what goes on, so they will not be cheated. So we must also be players while we leave the other private sector. Emeralds, for example, why we have not benefited is a poor mining regime under that. When you are mining gemstones, the area must be a restricted area. But you see, the mining sector basically was taken over by Senegalese. You go to Senegal, they have no emeralds. I've been to Senegal. I asked, you guys, do you have emeralds? They don't have emeralds. They're just traders. So they found people who are sleeping here. And they have made more money in our emeralds than ourselves. Why? We don't have a strict mining regime. Gemstones, if you go to Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, they are mined under restriction. Why? Because spillage is easy. You can put your emeralds in the pocket and you don't pay taxes. You can even swallow it. It's not poison.
Yeah.
And you go to your village and you bring it out. That's what was happening. These are physical things in the diamond sector. The studies here in Namibia, until they had to put restriction. Magufuli did the same in Tanzanite. And he was told Tanzanite, has fetches money. Why are we not getting enough money? He put a perimeter, security fence using the army and one gate. The revenues that the government were getting from Tanzanite increased by 400%. So these are his policies. What will we do in the gemstone areas? Restrict them, one gate, so that there is accountability, and you put scanners there that no emeralds passes from the emerald area without detection, so that we get our actual taxes. Secondly, We must have a bigger footprint as a government in mining emeralds. Look at those guys who are mining our emeralds. There's recently one which went for, I don't know whether this is $50 million. One emerald. And here we are struggling. We are getting 200 million from World Bank. They are laughing at us. Exactly. So in the mining sector, we are not just a joke. We are an international joke.
True. I agree with you.
And therefore, we have learned enough lessons from the mistakes of UNIP, the mistakes of MMD. Now we can come up with a better policy that benefits us and also the investors. We're not saying of taking over the mines. These are our minerals, and the mining is a wasting asset. Once you mine the minerals, they don't renew.
Yes.
And if we don't get enough minerals to help finance other renewable sectors like agriculture and tourism and value addition, when the mining is over, we'll be one of the poorest countries. And therefore, this mining sector that brings so much money is supposed to be used to diversify, not to pay a huge bureaucracy. So these are some of the realignments that must be done, improvements that can really get us value from the mining sector.
I hear you, Mr. President. I think you've shared very great thoughts on agriculture and mining in the last
I haven't even hammered the agriculture.
You did mention some very important things at the beginning of the conversation.
Excellent.
But I want to change the trajectory of this conversation a little bit. I'm a youth, and the youth agenda is a discussion that is very, very close to my heart. Now, this is because most of the times the young people in Zambia have been at the receiving end of everything. Your party as a young representative, congratulations on that. But I want to know if there are any other tasks or any other solutions that you have committed yourself to as a party to increase the youth participation in the affairs of the country. And I want to learn this from you in maybe just under 2 minutes.
Yeah, you know, the country is youthful. As you know, the average age of our country is about 20 years. So basically, we are becoming a youthful country over the years. And therefore, it's time for the youth. And the evidence is showing now. If all these young people, especially in parliament here, our member of parliament is the youngest, is 30 years this year. And even our candidates, most of them in the few constituencies that we fielded were young people. And therefore, we believe in the youth wave. And therefore, our party is engineered to the youth agenda. Why? It's a majority. Why? It's the right thing to do. And you will see,
I love the fact that you've said it's the right thing to do. There's no two ways about it.
And evidence has shown that the young people are taking over, and you must take over. Look in parliament now, those who won independent, young people, Bini Mampondo, JJ Banda, Muniazuru. So even the ground is yielding to the young people. So I can only say to young people, it's your time. As a party, we have attuned ourselves to young people. And you see, even now, if you come to our secretariat, basically, it's a center for young people. We have very few elderly people, because I'm no longer a youth myself. And therefore, we are creating a platform for young people. Even as we want to stay long, this is an institution that we have to hand over to the young people. We can go to our enterprises and be at home and look after our grandchildren, because very soon we'll have, some of us have grandchildren. Those who have, they must spend time looking after their grandchildren than sleeping in parliament. You understand?
Absolutely.
When you start sleeping in public, stop, go and look after your grandchildren, and let the young people who have the energy, the zeal, the tenacity to take over. It is your time. If you see even if they're not young people in Finland, the whole cabinet is in their 30s. In their 30s. The prime minister in their 30s, the minister of finance in their 30s, the are 33, and so on. So it's for Africa, which is quite young, a young population, the young people must take things now in their own hands, because they are the ones who have been affected by the bad decisions that we have made as older politicians. It is time for young people.
True. I absolutely agree with you. And with the next question that I have for you, I want you to end this question by describing the state of democracy in Zambia. But the main question that I have is basically building up from the fact that when it comes to ruling by the tenets of democracy, I think we seem to have a very long way to go as a country. You yourself, Mr. President, posted on your Facebook page on Thursday last week, and I quote, "Some of the reasons Zambians voted for change in 2021 by removing PF out of office was because of police brutality and rampant arrests of opponents on politically inclined motives. The emerging trend of police brutality and increasing politically inclined arrests under UPND is unfortunate and must be condemned, as it betrays the change for the better that Zambians voted for in 2021. Now, the UPND suffered oppression under the PF, so they say, but they are doing the very same things that they condemned. Why should Zambians think you'd be a different leader?
No, I think this is work in progress. We must not give up. I can tell you that MMD was oppressive to PF. I remember Mr. William Banda activities and the group outside is my friend. Yeah, the activities are still fresh. Chilanga by-election, literally wanting to beat people and so on. Yeah, you see the thuggery that was there. And then PF takes over to deal with, to stop that police brutality, only to embrace it. And they were removed because of that. And that's why we're saying that the UPND, which was voted on account of people wanting to stop that, must stop that, because it's a betrayal. Look, I mean, people can see. Now with social media, now people are informed. You don't need to tell them.
Exactly.
The arrest of, for example, Emmanuel Mamba.
Or Chris Zumanzimba.
A man who is not running away. No, but the typical one is Emmanuel Mamba, a former diplomat. Just saying, here is a call out, come to the police. It's when you receive a call out, that's when people now use the force. There are stages. Without protecting whatever cases they are investigating, the way people must be treated. So once you grab someone at a car wash, and you know that is the police brutality, and it will be proved in the course of law. So Zambians voted against that, and that's why in a democracy we must continue to aspire for the best. And it is true that the UPND must move away from that, because that would be a betrayal. But
where do you think the problem really lies? Because I'm now beginning to think we've been getting this from politicians. I mean,
do you know why it's repeating? It's violence is a way of holding on power.
Is it also a way in which we solve problems in this country?
Yes, because when you go there, some people tell you that the police, that you need to deal with them, otherwise they'll become popular. Because power has become the whole thing. So we need to bring new politics that put service above.
So we should be looking at
above our quest for power. So meaning our democracy, as you are saying, is still in its nappies. It needs to grow. And that's why we must continue to debate. We must continue to demand for a better democratic culture in our country. And that's why we must look a little bit. That's why I've given you. In fact, in UNIP itself, there was violence. There was violence against the then opposition parties when we were in the first multi-party. There's violence against the ANC that time of Nkumbula. I was violence against the Kapwepo's UPP. You know, the late Kapwepo was actually beaten. A leader beaten and instigated by the state. The MMD was doing the same. Remember, Sata was tear gassed, yeah? MMD. You remember, HH was arrested brutally.
Yes.
And I'm on record saying that the arrest of HH was unprofessional. You check it on your on your.
I think many people know that.
Of course. So I'm consistent. So we condemn that. And if we are given the power, I can tell you that re-election won't be an issue. The issue of Zambia is the issue of re-election. Cadres. Even there are people, even professors here who are cadres. No. Get out of that. Let's have professionals who are balanced. I mean, I don't want to talk very far. Even here, there's political tension among those who belong here and there. Even here, I don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that.
No,
and therefore, including the young people. So let's, I think, compete on ideas, not on whether you belong to this party and so on. There's no party which is from heaven. Eh? These are just political jackets which come and go. But the country lives on. We must subscribe to the national vision. What's the national vision? A better country for all. A better country for UNIP, because they're still here. A better country for MMD, a better country for PF, a better country for UPND, a better country for the other parties that will come tomorrow. And therefore, Wali, that's why we are here, to continue to ponder on continuous improvement. And we present a platform for continuous improvement.
Mr. President, I want us to end our conversation by looking at specifically something that is very, very important. Do you have something to say before that?
Yes, I want to say that something that really, for me, the problem is not even political parties. It's yourself, Zambians. So what you must be doing as Zambians, if a party does not meet your aspirations, like you have done, UNIP never met your aspiration, you remove them. Okay? UNIP remove them, MMD remove them, PF remove them, and if UPN does not meet your aspiration, you remove them. So the moment you get your power to remove governments, I can tell you there will be eventually an improvement. Can you imagine? Just say, okay, fine. Here is a template. Stop violence. We want a better economy. We want jobs. We want ABC, functioning agriculture. We want better infrastructure. You don't meet it out. There will be so much pressure to a point where eventually the future political parties will meet your aspirations. So the power does not lie in the political parties. The power lies in your hands as voters, as Zambians.
I appreciate that. And I'll give you just 1 minute to answer my next and last question. And this is on poverty. We have, as a country, been doing a lot. We've put in a lot of efforts to reduce poverty and the vulnerability among Zambians. The government has been providing for households in extreme poverty by expanding the social cash transfer programs. In 2014, only about 38 districts were receiving those benefits. And in 2019, 116 districts, all of them, started receiving social cash transfer. But before I understand from your perspective what your position is in terms of what can actually work in ending poverty.
Social cash transfer does not end poverty.
Well, it actually should obviously reduce the impact.
No, it just mitigates. Okay, it's a panadol.
Okay, so let's remove social cash transfer from the equation.
It's a panadol. So the panadol does not cure a disease. It only makes you feel better for a little while.
Okay, so tell me, what can end poverty in this country?
We need an economy that is growing, that's productive. So the people in the rural areas, why they are becoming poorer is that, number one, they have no access to financing to engage in agriculture. Over 70% of our population is involved in agriculture. We have no agricultural bank in this country. So they continue starving and then lining up for social cash transfer. In fact, the increase of people on the cash transfer list is an indictment on a government that the poverty is increasing under your reign. So as PF was increasing people on the social cash transfer, it was an indictment on them. As UPN is increasing the list of the social cash transfer, it means they are failing because their policies are not working. If the growth policies are working, you put the right facilitation in terms of access to financing to the rural farmers, marketing for their products, okay? Poverty will be removed in conjunction with the poor people, because now they are involved in rewarding activities, and the rewarding activities will only happen when the government delivers, puts in place resources and the marketing arrangements that make a farmer grow soybeans on groundnuts and get value, because government has an agency that buys and sells where there is a better market, or they have facilitated a private sector platform that buys and sells. Why our people are getting poor and are resorting to social cash transfer is because we have very poor agricultural policies, very poor natural resource-based economic activities in our country. Whether it's fisheries and so on, very little is happening. So our people are not involved in productive activities because of absence of the right policies and the right facilitation. And because of that, poverty is increasing. And we think that while social cash transfer is important for a little while, it must be transitional to the real solution. Just like when you go to a clinic, your temperature is high, okay? They give you Panadol to stabilize, and then you go to the causation of your sickness and deal with that. If not, eventually you'll die.
Now, Mr. President, we have a lot of arable land in this country, and only very, very minimal of it is used for productivity in agriculture. I hope that when you become president, you can consider real solutions to our problems. For example, get the ZNS, give them land in a province nearest to the Congo, let them do farming, and get that maize, send it out as export.
No. ZNS should. I'll show you next time. Let's look at just one sector. Say
I'll prepare.
Just agriculture. That would be wrong. It is the Zambians, the local farmers, the rural people who must grow and export and get value, not the ZNS. You can't be feeding the same expensive government. The ZNS should provide what you
feeding the same expensive government.
Yeah. So the ZNS, why is it important? It's important maybe to grow a buffer stock in case we don't have enough maize. The ZNS can now have food for national food security. So if you are going to bring the ZNS to grow food for exports, you are going to cloud out the private sector and kill people and perpetuate poverty. What we want is to facilitate you and I and the Zambian people to produce and earn dollars in the DRC, so that this money can now permeate to the rural area, to the actual people on the ground.
Mr. President, unfortunately, we've run out of time. I'll be very glad to invite you again on the public sphere to discuss most of the things we have been
exactly
about.
Sector specific. Maybe you invite us to talk about agriculture only. Next time mining, and next time infrastructure development.
This is a good start for us to
dive into because our manifesto is quite long. It's a 30-page document in summary, and we cannot exhaust it like this. So let's have sector-based topics on this wonderful radio.
We can agree that our next conversation will be on agriculture.
Perfect.
I'll say what I said at the beginning of this show in case you joined us late. Ladies and gentlemen, the question that we are asking today is, does President Highvie Hamududu have what it takes to become Zambia's 8th president? Mr. Highvie Hamududu was elected to the National Assembly for Wengwa constituency in the 2006 general elections as a member of the United Party for National Development. He was re-elected in the 2011 general elections. While in Parliament, he served as a member of the Public Accounts Committee and Budget Estimates Committee and was its chairman for 7 years. He also served as an executive committee member of the African Parliamentary Forum on Population and Development. In March 2017, he resigned from the UPND and launched the Free Market Party of National Unity in the same year, becoming its president. The Party of National Unity was later rebranded as Party of National Unity and Progress in January 2021. Mr. President, next time we meet, we'll be speaking about agriculture. That is set, it is agreed. Thank you so much for coming to the public sphere.
Thank you, Muiza. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you to our listeners. Please do join me next week, same time. We'll be having another interesting conversation. You've been listening to the public sphere. Have a good day.
Okay.